Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe wherever you're watching this today. This is going to be my Premier League predictions video for the 2020-21 season. I'm going to be predicting all the places in the Premier League from 20th all the way up to 1st. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, if you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button because it helps out the channel as well. Going into my predictions, and you guys as well, give me your predictions, your full predicted Premier League table in the comments below. Interested to see your opinions, but let's get into it. Firstly, 20th place. Who's going down? Rock bottom for me is going to be West Brom. They're going straight back down to the Championship, in my opinion. I quite like Slaven Bilic. I quite like the style of play. I think it's going to be more exciting to watch West Brom in the Premier League this year than in previous years. I just think overall the quality of players is going to really be a detriment to West Brom. I just don't think they've got the quality of squad. Maybe a player like Pereira could help out and add that flair. I thought he was a very exciting player to watch in the Championship last season. I just don't think they've got the quality to stay up, and I think that Bilic could be sacked early on in the season. Moving on now to 19th, Fulham as well. Another one of the promoted teams will be going straight back down. I like Scott Parker, of course, that Chelsea connection, but I think as a coach he's done really well, and I think considering the way Fulham failed last time in the Premier League, it'll be exciting to see them back up in the league, and I hope Scott Parker does well. But I just think a bit like West Brom, the quality of squad once again I think will let them down, and I also think this is going to be a prevalent theme within my predictions. I think the nature of this season, this Premier League season, how congested it is, I think is really going to hurt smaller squads, and I think it's going to be really hard to keep players fit. I think the rapid amount of games is going to benefit bigger squads over the period of the season, so I think Fulham will be heading down. 18th, for me, this may be a big shout, but I think West Ham are going down. I think I've seen a trend in recent years, and I think you could talk about West Brom a few years ago, Stoke, Swansea, where you're continually sort of near the relegation zone, but you pull yourself out of it in like the final 10 games. West Ham have been doing that. They've been stagnant for many years, stationary, no investment. The fans are very unhappy with the board currently. If they lose Declan Rice, which I don't think they will, I think that will definitely mean them going down. I just don't see a very happy club at the moment. I can't see David Moyes lasting the full season at the London Stadium. I think he'll be sacked pretty early on, to be honest. The club seem in disarray. I just cannot see them surviving this year, and I think this will be the season they drop back down to the Championship. 17th, just surviving once again like they did last year, Aston Villa. For me, keeping Jack Grealish is huge. I'm really happy that, of course, Aston Villa stayed up and Jack Grealish staying in the Premier League, because I think if Aston Villa would have gone down, I think a big club would have come in for him. But Jack Grealish staying there is huge for creativity. Defensive structure definitely improved to help keep them in the league last year. I still think they're going to be in and around there for me. I think the quality of the squad once again will be a struggle for them really to stay up, but I think they will just make it. And I think signing Ollie Watkins as well from Brentford is a really exciting piece of business. Even if it is a big fee, I would like to see what he does in the Premier League this year. Moving up now to 16th, Crystal Palace for me. The Wilfried Zaha saga that just never seems to end. Will we stay? Will we go? I think the problem with Wilfried Zaha is I think there's a lot of clubs now, like top 6 clubs in the Premier League, who don't need Wilfried Zaha because they've invested in the position he plays in. So I think it's going to be difficult for him to get a move. I think a bit like other clubs in this sort of area of the table, Eze from the Championship, QPR, exciting addition. See how he adapts to the Premier League. And also Michy Batshuayi going back on loan to Crystal Palace. That could add goals for them, that keeps them up in the league. But I just think the style of play will keep them up, but I don't think it's going to be a very exciting season for Crystal Palace. I don't think they're going to do much. I think it will be very turgid throughout the season. Consistency and will be difficult to find, but I think they'll just about survive because of the lack of quality below them in the Premier League. 15th for me is going to be Brighton. I really like Graham Potter and his possession style developing last year. I think keeping both Lewis Dunk and Ben White is absolutely massive for their defence this year, and I think will give them enough to stay up. The concern with Brighton is lack of goals up top. I think Aaron Connolly is an exciting young player up top. Also Neil Mopai, who scored a bunch of goals last year, but I think lack of goals for me is a big point for them. I just think is going to stop them and prevent them going any higher than 15th, which is where I've got them this season. 14th is going to be Newcastle United. The takeover did not happen. sad morale at that club, really. But I do think signing both Ryan Fraser and Callum Wilson, I think, are exciting additions that could add a bit of flair to their attack this season. I think Steve Bruce does a decent job in very difficult circumstances. I think the long-term thing with Newcastle is this ownership issue. Will it be taken over sooner rather than later? And I think that's going to cause a lot of problems for Newcastle this season. I think you'll see the similar thing where maybe they start the season quite poor and maybe Steve Bruce picks it up over the season. I mean, he did outperform their XG massively last year, and that was a sense of luck for them of not getting relegated. But I do think they'll probably have enough with the likes of Wilson to stay up this year once again in mid-table pretty much. 13th for me, Burnley. Stereotypical but solid, stable club for me. Sean Dyche, I know there was some sort of talk about sort of conflict between him and the Burnley board, but I think the problem with Sean Dyche is, considering the style of play, him sort of upgrading from Burnley, I just wonder what top club would take him, really. I think that's always going to be a concern, and that may be a detriment and unfair to Sean Dyche as a coach, because I think he's done a brilliant job for Burnley over the years, consistently keeping them in the Premier League. I don't think it's going to be as good as last year, but I think they will safely stay in the Premier League. Very stable Premier League club. 12th are going to be Leeds United, the final promoted team in my table. Marcelo Bielsa, of course, there's so much excitement over him being in the Premier League this year. How is he going to cope? How's his style of football going to adapt to the Premier League? I think their high pressing style, I think a bit like how Wolves and Sheffield United caught teams out last year and previous years as well, I think will help them. I don't think they're going to be as good as Wolves and Sheffield United were. I think maybe the high pressing style will catch them out at times over the season. I think because it's going to be such a slog of a season this year, I think that'll be difficult for them, but I think they've got some exciting additions. Rodrigo is a real smart piece of business that definitely will help their attack, but I do think the big rivalries will be exciting to watch, especially as a Chelsea fan, against Leeds, Lampard and Bielsa, and other coaches against Bielsa this year. But I just think 12th will be the highest they can get this year, in my opinion. Moving up now to 11th, Sheffield United. Second season test for them. A smaller squad, I think, as I've stated before, I think will cause problems for them. I don't think they're going to reach the heights of last season. Chris Wilder's a really impressive coach and individual, and I think his sort of nous and experience and intelligence, I think, will help get them through difficult periods throughout the season. I mean, I think losing Dean Henderson is a massive loss. I don't think Aaron Ramsdale's an awful keeper, but I just think that will hurt them in certain situations and cause them to drop down the table a little bit. Also, as a Chelsea fan, seeing Ethan Ampadu going there on loan this season, I hope he has a really good year for Sheffield United. So 11th for them. Now moving on to the top 10. This may surprise some people. For me, 10th, it's going to be Leicester City. The big thing for me is Brendan Rodgers. It was a similar tale last year to the way it all fell apart for Liverpool in 13-14, that title challenge. It really fell off for Leicester City. And recently going back and watching some things from the Premier League last season, I think people forget how massive a drop it was. And I think the morale and sort of the harmony in that squad and the confidence of that squad, the mentality to build them up again, even though they still have some very impressive players, even losing Ben Chilwell, I think it's going to be difficult. And also another concern is now European football. That's something that Brendan Rodgers didn't have to contend with last year, but the added element of Europa League, if they go into that, go deep in that competition, I think will hurt them over the season. And I also think Brendan Rodgers doesn't have a great record in Europe, really, and that's always been a big question mark for him. Maybe he can prove me wrong this year, but I think in terms of the Premier League, I think Leicester will struggle, and I think maybe their poor form at the end of 1920 due to the lack of time between that season and this season will hurt them at the start of the season, and I think they'll lose track of the top four race. So I think Leicester will finish 10th. 9th is going to be Carlo Ancelotti's Everton. Really exciting signings, mostly in midfield. Alan, James Rodriguez, Decore. Decore is a massive signing for me. I know they've wanted him for a few years now, but that's a good signing. Lots of midfielders. I still think the concern is lack of balance for Everton, and you're always at the stage of the season where they've had a decent transfer window, as we've seen many times before. People think, oh, actually they could do something this year, but then they tail off. I don't think that's going to happen as extremely as maybe under Ronald Koeman a few years ago. I think Carlo's a much better coach, and I think he'll get something out of that team. And I also think having Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front, banging form, I think will help them over the season. And Rodriguez could add that spark in attack to add some inspiration. I just think there are clearer problems there, especially defensively, and what style of play are Everton actually trying to implement. I think that's always been unclear in recent years, and until they get that, I think they're always going to struggle to break into, say, the top 7 or top 6. So I think for me, Everton 9th in the season, but I think there will be some bright moments over the year for the Toffees. Now 8th for me is going to be Southampton. I think they're a dark horse this year, and I think they will cause teams a lot of problems. Just look at their form following the 9-0 defeat to Leicester. Absolutely amazing what Ralph Hasenhüttl Hasenhüttl has done with the Saints since then. I think they've got such a settled side now, a very clear defined style under Hasenhüttl, which I think will get them above teams like Everton over the year. Very intense style, which could hurt their players over the year, but those players are now used to that style. I think they feel very comfortable in that system now and confident they can get big results and maybe upset some of the bigger teams in the league. Also, Danny Ings, if he has another goal scoring season like last year, they'll have a good year. So for me, 8th for Southampton. 7th are going to be Wolves. They still cannot break into the top 6 for me. I think very settled, of course, very ambitious club. Fabio Silva coming in is an interesting signing. You got the quality of Jimenez, Traore and Jota and other players in their squad as well that they've smartly invested in recent years to keep them where they are. But I just think the loss of Doherty maybe will impact them going forward. Very settled side there, and losing a key player who's been there for a long time now, I think will hurt them over the season. So 7th for me for Wolves. Now moving into the top 6, much debated top 6. Firstly, it's going to be Arsenal, who I think have looked really positive under Mikel Arteta. I am a little bit conflicted on this, and I think they could maybe outperform my expectation and maybe sneak into that top 4. I don't think it's going to be as big of a gap as last season for Arsenal. I think cohesive and structured are 2 words you cannot use with Arsenal in recent years, but I think they may start to have it now under Arteta. That FA Cup win, the confidence of that, the Community Shield win over Liverpool, I just think will give them that boost going into the season. Keeping Aubameyang is absolutely massive for that club. The goals in that team, the lack of goals if he's not there, I think is a massive worry. I still think there's concerns defensively and maybe with some of those players still from the Wenger years that could let you down every now and then. But I think some of the signings, Magalhaes and Willian, I think are 2 smart additions to the squad. Saliba in defence as well could help them out as well. And the goals of Aubameyang are so consistent that I think they will get top 6. But I just think 6th will still be that position for Arsenal, which may be frustrating for fans. But I think overall, the long-term project under Arteta, if Arsenal stick with it, I think is going to be very exciting for that club. 5th is going to be Tottenham, so no Champions League place for them. For me, it's a Jose Mourinho factor in a positive and negative sense. I think they'll put away a lot of teams this year. I think they'll have better results consistently over the year, even with the added element of a really ridiculous start to the season in terms of Europa League qualification and Premier League games all mixed in within there. Keeping Harry Kane fit is absolutely vital for their season, as well as Son, as well as Ali, as well as other players in their squad as well, like Lo Celso, who I think had a good end to the year last season. But I just think for me, with Jose Mourinho, it's the factor of big games, the tactics in big games. Because I think if you watch Tottenham under Jose last year, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 occasions, I think they got outplayed every time. I mean, Jose Mourinho against Frank Lampard got outplayed twice there. I just think the sit deep and hope to counter doesn't work as effectively anymore. And I think he'll be found out in those games, which mean they'll limit their chances of getting into the Champions League places this year for me. So 5th, a better year than last time, but I still don't think they'll be good enough to get into the top 4. Now going into the Champions League places, the top 4. 4th is going to be Manchester United for me. I think Solskjaer, of course, having a little bit more of a settled side now. I think bringing in Van der Beek is a decent signing. Whether it's what they really need in midfield, I'm not entirely sure, but he's a good player, decent player, will definitely improve their first team. This whole Jadon Sancho chase, will they get him? Will they not get him? I think that's a massive thing as well. And I think the lack of squad quality compared to other top teams for Man United, I think will be of detriment to them in a very busy season. The reliance on Bruno Fernandes is so big, and I think if Bruno, for instance, gets injured earlier in the season and his form dips off maybe, I think that could be a massive detriment to Man United. I really think it is, and I think relying so heavily on one player to dictate the creative play, I think you saw at certain times in certain games at the back end of last season when Man United looked absolutely exhausted, I think was a massive problem. I think Martial will score a lot of goals. I think Rashford will have a good year, and I think as well a Mason Greenwood, a very exciting youth product once again. But I think that overall, I just think Solskjaer, I think there could be an element where he struggles over the year. I think a lack of maybe a vision on the pitch could hurt them. I think the lack of investment overall in the squad will be a friction to fans as well. I've heard a lot of complaints once again from Man United fans over the lack of investment in the team. And I just also worry about defensively with them. I think Maguire at times got caught out as well. And De Gea, Henderson, will that be a conflict over the year? I just think 4th will be good enough for Man United, but I don't see them getting into a title race at all, in my opinion, especially if they don't get Jadon Sancho in this transfer window. Top 3 now. 3, it's going to be Chelsea. Chelsea for me, of course, defensive structure is my biggest concern with Chelsea. The amount of goals we conceded last year, if that does not improve, Chelsea's positioning will not improve. Even with the incredible summer transfer window, the attacking players we brought in, Hakim Ziyech, Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, maybe Thiago Silva could help us out defensively. I think attacking options, fluidity of attack, I think will be of massive benefit to Chelsea. I think will be one of the most dangerous and exciting teams to to watch over the season. I can expect a lot of goals from Frank Lampard's Chelsea. I just concerned about defensively over the season. But for me, the big thing is not only playing great football, it's also about closing that gap between us, Manchester City and Liverpool. That's the big aim of the season. It cannot be as wide the gap as last season. Chelsea now need to start to get close to that top two. I still think it'd be a little bit too much to bridge that big gap this year, even with the investment. I think you'd have to see one of those top two really drop off in form. But I think third, with better points tally, better goals, better defensively, I think will be a decent year once again for Frank Lampard, and maybe a trophy in other competitions. Top two now. So who's winning the Premier League? For me, second is going to be Liverpool. I don't think they're going to retain the title. It's so difficult to retain a Premier League title. I think losing out on the likes of Timo Werner to improve that squad, I think is a mistake by Liverpool. I really do. I know they've had a difficult period with, of course, COVID, spending money and stuff like that. I think Thiago would be a really good signing for their midfield. I think the problem is with the intensity of Jurgen Klopp. I think that's the big thing that could derail their season. Not because there's going to be losing the dressing room or anything with Jurgen Klopp. I just wonder, because they've been climbing that mountain now and they're basically at the top of the mountain. They've won the Champions League and they've won the Premier League so dominantly. I just wonder maybe motivation or psychology with that team. The motivation to go in and do it again is such a big ask for a team, especially in the current Premier League. So I think it's going to be difficult for them once again. I think they'll have a very decent season. They could have a better time in the Champions League. I just cannot see them retaining their title, but I still do think they'll be in a title race. I don't think they're going to drop off that much, but I think for me, obviously now Manchester City are going to win the league. I just think for me, a motivated and wounded Pep Guardiola, I think is going to be a massive thing for the season, a massive narrative running through the season. I think Pep will really want to prove his doubters wrong, critics. I think last season would have really hurt him, not only losing the Premier League, but of course losing the Champions League once again, that Lyon defeat. I think overall, it's still the quality of that squad. Man City have to win the league. They really do. I still even think when you look at Chelsea spending a lot of money, but I look at Kevin De Bruyne, of course, won PFA Player of the Year. When you've got a player like him in your team, and you've got Sergio Aguero, and you've got Jesus, when you've got Sterling, Laporte, maybe Koulibaly coming in as well, I still think Manchester City have the strongest squad in this Premier League, and I think they should win it this year. I think they will retain it. I think there'll be that motivation for Pep to prove himself as the league's best manager once again, which is why I think they're going to be Premier League champions in 2021. But that is it, my big prediction video for the Premier League season, which is nearly upon us. Interesting to do. I'm sure I'll look like an idiot at the end of the season because I'm sure a lot of these will be proven wrong. Now I'll pass it over to you guys in the comments. Let me know your predictions for the season, your full table prediction. Interested to hear your thoughts. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea. Have a great day and I'll see you again.